everyone. I'm so happy that you're here today. Do you remember last time we were talking, we talked about two of the ways that we know for sure that Jesus rose from the dead. And one of them was the empty tomb. The fact that there was no body in there. Jesus was gone, even though the tomb was guarded and sealed. And the second was that there were over 500 people that saw Jesus after he had come back to life. Well, that was pretty amazing. Today, I'm going to tell you a story about the third time that Jesus' closest disciples saw him after he rose from the dead. And this time, it's in a different place than the other two times. If you remember, the other two times the disciples were in a locked room. Remember, they were afraid of the Jewish leaders. They were afraid they were going to get arrested. And so they were hiding in a locked room. And all of a sudden, Jesus appears there right in the middle of them. Imagine how surprised they were and how amazed. But you know what? It's no problem for God to go through locked doors. But today's story is a little bit different because Jesus appears to the disciples beside the Sea of Galilee, outside. But before I tell you that story, there's actually another story I want to tell you that we're going to have to go back in time a bit for. So before Jesus was crucified, right back when the disciples first met Jesus, we find Jesus again at the Sea of Galilee. And he's teaching the people, and the people are crowding around him. And Peter and Andrew and James and John were there because they're fishermen. And they were there with their fishing boats. Here's our handy-dandy fishing boat. We're going to stand up here. So they were there with their fishing boats, and they were washing their nets. They were cleaning them and mending them by the side of the Sea of Galilee. They had been out fishing all night long. And guess what they had caught? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. They had worked so hard and for nothing, no success. And so they were mending their nets. And Jesus went to Peter and he asked Peter if he could get into the boat and if Peter would just row out just a little bit from the shore. And then Jesus sat down in the boat and he taught the people from the boat. That way they weren't crowding and crushing him and he was able to teach better. So he taught, and after he finished teaching, he said to Peter, "Go out into the deep water and throw your nets in." Well, Peter said, "Master, we worked hard all night long. And you know what? We caught absolutely nothing. But because it's you who's asking, okay, we'll do it." You see, if it had been anyone else, I'm sure Peter would have said absolutely no. They had worked all night long and caught no fish. And everyone knows that the best time to fish was at night. And now it's daytime. Plus, they had just spent hours cleaning and washing and mending their nets to get ready for the next night of fishing. So they're going to have to do that all over again for nothing. But Peter thought, you know what? Maybe it's not for nothing. Maybe, just maybe, something amazing will happen. Well, they threw their nets in, and when they pulled them back, they were so full of fish that the nets started to tear. Well, they called to James and John, and they said, "Come and help us." And so James and John, they brought their boat over, and they started filling the boats with the fish that were caught in the nets. And the boats got so full that they actually started to sink. It was amazing. It was a miracle. And Peter realized this. He realized that Jesus was somebody who was really special, someone amazing. And he fell down on his knees. And Peter thought, I'm such a terrible man. I'm so sinful. I'm so bad. Jesus shouldn't be anywhere near me. And so he said to Jesus, "Go away from me. I'm a sinner." But you know what? The Bible tells us that Jesus came actually to save sinners. Jesus came for people just like Peter. And so Jesus knew all about Peter. He had already known everything Peter had done. And so he says to Peter, "Don't be afraid. From now on, you're going to catch men." Well, now we're going to fast forward to the point in time where Jesus has raised from the dead. He's alive and he's appeared to the disciples. And so the disciples now, they're at the Sea of Galilee. And Peter says to those who are with him, so like Nathanael was with him, and Thomas, and James, and John, and 2 other disciples, and he says, I'm going to go fishing. And so they said, well, we'll come with you. And so they get into the boat, and out they go, and they fish all night long, and guess what? They don't catch anything, just like last time. And so it was a whole full night of just working with no success. And so it's coming morning, and they're coming back in, and they see someone on the shore, and they don't recognize him. They don't realize that it's actually Jesus. And Jesus calls out to them, and he says, friend, did you catch anything? And they call back and they say, no, we didn't catch anything. And Jesus said, well, why don't you try throwing your nets on the right side of the boat? You'll catch something there. On the right side of the boat, what difference could it possibly make to throw your nets on one side of the boat instead of the other side of the boat? But you know what? For some reason, the disciples did. And they took their nets and they threw them on the right side of the boat. So for you guys, the right side of the boat probably is over here. So they threw it on the right side of the boat, and they cast their nets out, and they started pulling them back in. And guess what? They were so full of fish that they couldn't even haul it into the boat. It was amazing. And as soon as that happened, John looked at Peter and he said, it's the Lord. And when Peter heard that, he jumped right into the Sea of Galilee, clothes and all, and he swam right for Jesus. Well, the disciples followed in the boat, and they were towing that heavy net full of fish. And they got to the shore, and when they got there, they saw that there was a fire burning with coals, and there was some fish already cooking and some bread. And Jesus said to them, bring some of the fish that you caught. And so Peter goes, and he jumps into the boat, and he starts pulling the net in, and they bring in the net, and it was full of large fish, about 153 large fish. And so Jesus says, come and have some breakfast. And so the disciples go and they eat with Jesus. And then Jesus talks to Peter. And Peter actually had another name. It was Simon. So his name was Simon Peter. And so he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Now, if you remember back before Jesus was arrested, remember when Peter was talking and he said, Lord, even if everyone else deserts you, I will never leave you. I will die with you. So Peter looks at Jesus and he said, Lord, you know that I love you. And then Jesus says, feed my lambs. Well, then Jesus looks at Peter again. He says, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter says, Lord, you know that I love you. And Jesus said, take care of my sheep. And again, Jesus looks at him. He says, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Well, Peter felt hurt because Jesus asked him 3 times if he loved him. He said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. And Jesus said, feed my sheep. Now, do you remember before, Peter had denied Jesus 3 times. And now Jesus has given Peter a chance to say not only that he knows Jesus, but that he loves Jesus 3 times. Well, I'm really glad that you were able to be with us here today, and I hope we see you next time. Bye for now.